You are Locked On Wolverines POSTCAST, part of Locked On Sports Detroit on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Woo! Michigan survives. I think that's the only way to put it. So welcome into a live Locked On Wolverines postcast. I am your host, Jake Rietma. You can follow me on Twitter at Jake_Rietma. And what began as what felt like the definition of a blowout ended with everybody collectively breathing a sigh of relief. 27-24, the final in this one. Minnesota outscores the Wolverines 21-3 in the fourth quarter to make this way too close for comfort. But in the end, all is well that ends well. 4-1 Michigan moves to with the win, 2-0 in the Big Ten. Thank you for making Locked On Wolverines postcast your post-game destination. We are all part of the Locked On Sports Detroit network, and of course, free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, Locked On Sports Detroit. Do me a favor, subscribe. I appreciate everybody tuning in to the Locked On Wolverines postcast. Make sure you're checking out Locked On Wolverines with Isaiah Hull each and every day as well. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every day. This episode of the Locked On Wolverines postcast is brought to you by FanDuel. That's right. Make every moment matter more. Place your first $5 bet with FanDuel, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets. It's guaranteed. We love that. Guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And man, I don't know about you, but I took my foot off the gas a little bit with Michigan, even in that first half, up 21-0. And you got to give Minnesota credit because I think the way they ended that first half provided a glimpse into what the second half would entail, and that this Golden Gopher team under PJ Fleck just never quit. I mean, they go down and they get the field goal to conclude the first half. And then in the second half, and in particular the fourth quarter, this Minnesota team just would not go away. Nothing really doing in the third quarter. Michigan got a field goal, but 21-3, the Golden Gophers scored 3 touchdowns in that fourth quarter. A couple of notes that I put together. Minnesota scored 2 of those touchdowns in the fourth quarter, just 2 minutes and 56 seconds apart. They had the Wolverines reeling a little bit on defense. They had to play on special teams on the punt return to get the ball down inside the 20. That led to Darius Taylor's second touchdown. So just a lot of instances where you could point to and say the Michigan Wolverines just did not close out this game like winners. I mean, they had a chance, and I know it's a cliche, but you talk about going for the jugular, you talk about putting the nail in the coffin, you talk about stepping on the throat, any cliche analogy you want to put together about finishing games, the Michigan Wolverines just did not do that this afternoon. And again, I know you don't have to draw a picture on the schedule. It doesn't have to be a nice, pretty W. It just has to be a W. But, man, there's a lot to look at on the film, in particular in the fourth quarter, of ways to improve, and especially on defense, because you look at what Minnesota's offense was able to do in that fourth quarter. And Max Brosmer, I know he's not going to wow anyone with his skills and capabilities, but you look at his final line, box score wise, and the production he had in the fourth quarter. And this is a guy that had his way, 27-41, 258 yards with the 1 touchdown pass towards the end. Just an incredible touchdown catch that time by Daniel Jackson. And Minnesota, to give them credit without sounding like a broken record, they would not be denied. They just kept they just kept hanging around, and ultimately, I think, I hate the saying we didn't lose, we ran out of time, but I think Minnesota has a little bit of a legitimate case to say we didn't lose as much as we ran out of time, because if that game is, instead of 60 minutes, if that game's 65 minutes, you feel like Minnesota is coming home with a win. Now, the onside kick, wow. Michigan recovers it the second time around, but Minnesota gets the first one, and I think we can all look at each other and say Michigan might have dodged a bullet with that. They get the offsides call on Minnesota, and the onside kick is interesting because it's progressionally been taken out of football a little bit, piece by piece at a time. Now in the NFL, you have to report that you're kicking an onside kick, and you have to have an even number of players on both sides. You can't load up on one side. We don't need to break down the intricate details of an onside kick, but that first one was executed perfectly by Minnesota. And I'm not here to sound like the biggest Minnesota Golden Gophers fan, but special teams wise, they executed well a number of times. I talked about the punt return that set up Minnesota for their second touchdown of the ball game, but that onside kick, the first one, was executed perfectly because they recover it and the offsides penalty negates it. But even Mike Piora, whatever the Fox rules analyst guy's name is, everybody knows he's on the gifts with the creepy, he's just kind of weird, but whatever, he's there. And he's the Fox rules analyst. And he said, I just don't think that was offsides. So if you, not to play the hypothetical game, but if you take out that offsides call, and you look at what Minnesota potentially could have done with one more opportunity, down by just 3 in a 27-24 ball game. That's why I use the term Michigan escapes, Michigan survives. They are fortunate to be on the winning side of this one and 4-1 on the season and 2-0 in Big Ten play. But welcome into a live Locked On Wolverines postcast. Let's get to some of the comments. A lot of people want to chime in on this one. All is well. The delusion. You'll have huge issues. You're going to get beat by great teams by a lot. That's from Moan. I don't know how to pronounce that, Monas. But I appreciate that. I was kind of making a joke, all is well that ends well. I think if you've listened to the first, 7 minutes of this program, you would be able to conclude that I don't think all is well with the Michigan football program as far as their expectations for this season. I think they've already fallen a little bit short of that. I mean, still everything in front of them because they're undefeated in the Big Ten. And yes, they had the setback against Texas, but if you want to subscribe to the theory that what they've done in the past, this season doesn't set them up for their hopes and dreams and what they want to achieve in the 2024 season, then yeah, I buy that 100%. I'm not here saying, yeah, Michigan's got it all figured out. See, they're undefeated in Big Ten play and no one can touch them. No, I'm not saying that whatsoever, because I think in Sharon Moore's post-game interview was a testament to that. He was not happy, and rightfully so, because this was, especially the fourth quarter, just a game that you look back and when you watch the film, you'll just see so many shortcomings from the Maize and Blue that you have to get cleaned up. Up next is Washington. So I don't think that's necessarily the biggest threat in the Big Ten. When you look at the Washington Huskies, certainly a team that's taken some steps back after their national championship appearance against the Wolverines last year, but a Big Ten opponent nonetheless, and certainly not somebody to take lightly. All right, other comments in the section as well. Jerk D's says, I fear Orji is a liability. Yeah, I think I didn't want to open with the shortcomings of Alex Orji because we've talked about that at great length on this program, but it is a part of the post-game recap on a live Locked On Wolverines postcast that he just doesn't possess the ability to throw the ball down the field. And there were various instances in this game. Although that said, I think he took a step forward in some aspects. Now, I know the comment section is going to go crazy here because I said Alex Orji took a step forward, but 10 of 18, 86 yards. He had the one touchdown pass. I think schematically speaking, there was a lot more done to try to pave a game plan that he could be successful in. And I was watching College Game Day this morning where Herb Street and Saban and Reese Davis and everybody's talking about putting your quarterback in a position to be successful based on the play calling and the schematical approach of the offense. And I think Michigan showed that today. Orji's one touchdown pass, you get a guy out in the flats and that's an easy touchdown toss to Tyler Morris for the score. And you got to find ways to get for Orji to be able to make those confident throws in the passing game that don't necessarily result in him having to check down from one progression to the next progression, read the defense, but more or less thinking, couple of reads. If it's not there, tuck it and run it. All right. 4X Trader says, I think I speak for every Michigan fan when I say we all loved having Don Brown back. Yeah, this defense looks a little bit different with Wink Martindale. That's for sure. That said, I think defensively, if you and this isn't to say, oh yeah, I'm not cherry picking here, so please don't hear that. But you take out the fourth quarter, and it's a very well-executed game plan defensively by Michigan. And you look at some of the plays that they made, the blocked punt. I know that's not defense specifically, but the interception by Jyaire Hill was one of the better plays you will see by a collegiate defensive back. And so they have the athletes, they have the players on the defensive side to be a shutdown defense. And at times they showed it here this afternoon. And again, you look at some things that kind of snowballed in the fourth quarter where Minnesota gets the one touchdown drive. They get a 3-and-out, great punt return, another touchdown drive, and then a third touchdown drive in the fourth quarter where things just got rolling for the Golden Gophers in that fourth quarter. That helped a lot with kind of making this a really close game. And I know that's pointing out the obvious, but sometimes an offense gets rolling and the momentum and the confidence that they were playing with, and I think you saw that from the Minnesota Golden Gophers, in particular, Max Brosmer, the quarterback, Darius Taylor, the running back, who had 2 rushing touchdowns. And then on the receiving end of things, Daniel Jackson had the one impressive reception. And then Elijah Spencer had 6 receptions for 67 yards for the Golden Gophers. But in the end, it's Michigan holding on for the win, 27-24 with the win. Michigan now 4-1 on the season, 2-0 in the Big Ten. Minnesota falls to 2-3 and 0-2 in the conference. We're going to continue breaking this one down. Up next, we'll break it down a little bit more on Alex Orji specifically and talk about the rushing attack from Mullings as well. Don't go anywhere. Locked On Wolverines just getting started on Locked On Sports Detroit. Hey, this episode of the Locked On Wolverines postcast is brought to you by Robinhood. That's right. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash. They can also receive unlimited 1% deposit bonuses and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. How about that, sports fans? The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. That's Robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. All right, we are cruising right along on a live Locked On Wolverines postcast. If you're just joining us, my name is Jake Rietma. You can follow me on Twitter at Jake_Rietma. Appreciate everybody tuning in. A little bit about me. I was formerly with 97.1 The Ticket in Detroit, now with Locked On Sports Detroit, and we have launched Locked On Sports Detroit, your home for all things Detroit sports and the Michigan Wolverines postcast. This is your post-game destination. We had an incredible Locked On Tigers postcast last night after they clinched a spot in the 2024 MLB postseason. That was electric. No, there is no other way to put it. Tigers in a rain delay will play later on today against the Chicago White Sox, but a college football Saturday, week 5, and for the Wolverines, it's their 4th win of the season. They topped the Golden Gophers 27-24, despite Minnesota outscoring Michigan Wolverines 21-3 in that fourth quarter. But nonetheless, offensively, another big day on the ground for Kalel Mullings, 24 carries, 111 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I think we can all agree he is the bell cow, the workhorse. I love the Clydesdale, all the different terminologies for a running back that can carry it between the tackles, that you can hand the ball to 30 times a game and run behind that big offensive line. So I thought Michigan was displaying that in the first half, got away from it a little bit in that second half. And the second half, again, I use the term snowball because that's really what it felt like, where Minnesota made a couple of plays, started to believe in themselves, got the confidence, and it just started to snowball to the point where Michigan couldn't really get a grasp on the game. for Michigan, as I look at these notes, just a different team in the first half compared to the second half. And they will have to, again, look at the film throughout the course of this week, try to bounce back in a productive way before that game against the Washington Huskies, which will be in Washington, one of the great places to play in college football. It's right on the water, beautiful campus. I've been there a couple of times, have not been there for a game, but you can bike all through the campus there at the University of Washington, and you're overlooking the lake from the stadium at the University of Washington, and really, really neat spot to take in a college football game. So Michigan, Washington, and the kickoff for that one is at 6:30 on Saturday. So we'll have a Locked On Wolverines postcast immediately following that game as well. Other comments to get to. Casey is up next on a live Locked On Wolverines postcast. Tigers bounce Mariners. Lions will trounce Seahawks. Seattle won't be happy with Detroit come Tuesday morning. That's right. We'll keep it going with Seattle with the on the college ranks, with Michigan taking on Washington. The campus not too far from downtown Seattle. But yeah, the Tigers and hopefully the Lions on Monday Night Football. We'll have a Locked On Lions postcast on Monday night after the game as well. And then the following Saturday, we'll just keep it going with the Locked On Wolverines. Something that Sherrone Moore said post-game I thought really stood out to me, just with how for once he expressed almost that accountability factor, the disappointment he had in his team and their lack of execution down the stretch. And so many times it feels like when Sherrone Moore speaks, or really anybody associated with the University of Michigan, it's always, and maybe it's not we're the best, but it's always everything's going according to plan, and we're Michigan, nothing can faze us. But it felt like that post-game interview suggested that not only Sherrone Moore, but collectively as a team, this Wolverine staff and players just need to get back to the fundamentals, to executing better offensively, defensively. There's no reason that this game should have been as close as it was. And I think there's something to be said about, quote unquote, learning your lessons after a win compared to learning from a loss, where you get the win and you're still undefeated in Big Ten play. Everything's still in front of you, yada, yada, yada. The list goes on. But you can go back and take a critical eye to this film and say, this is not the caliber of play we expect from the University of Michigan, especially at home against a team in Minnesota that lost to North Carolina, lost to Iowa. This is not a team that posed any kind of threat, yet the final score reads a 3-point game. And aside from, in my opinion, a botched onside kick penalty, offsides penalty against Minnesota, you're just fortunate to escape. So that's my thoughts. I'd love to hear from you as well. Let me know in the comments on a live Locked On Wolverines postcast. We will tie a bow on this one and continue to look ahead for the University of Michigan when we come back. Michigan gets the win over Minnesota, but it was not pretty, especially in that fourth quarter, with the Golden Gophers outscoring Michigan 21-3, come all the way back to make it a 27-24 final. But nonetheless, Michigan gets the dub. Final segment coming up next on a live Locked On Wolverines postcast. This episode of the Locked On Wolverines postcast is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. And listen up, I know we're all college football fans here, but there's probably a lot of NFL fans as well. And for all you NFL fans, you can start the season with big returns on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you think, I need to make this pick, I need to make this bet, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets. You know what I call that? This isn't even in the script, but I call that one-stop shop, everything you need at FanDuel.com. It is the destination for all sports fans, all sports gambling fans, FanDuel.com. And right now, you can get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's guaranteed. $200 guaranteed in bonus bets when you place your first $5 bet. All you have to do is go to FanDuel.com, check out the live odds, always available. And like I said, there's more than just betting there. You can check the latest stats, look at some live play-by-plays, and just get in on the action. It all happens at FanDuel.com. FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back to a live Locked On Wolverines postcast. BC in the comments, I appreciate this one. Might as well start with this one. Tigers, Wolverines, does this guy do Lions postcast too? I certainly do. That's right. I am all Detroit all the time, fired up to be with Locked On Sports Detroit, and it's real simple. This is your post-game destination. Post-game after Tigers, after Lions, after Pistons, and after the Wolverines. That's the beauty of the Locked On Sports brand. Free and available wherever you get your podcast, available on YouTube as well. So if you're new around here, make sure you subscribe. Free content. Who doesn't love that? Had some friends at the game today at the big house buying ponchos, and the weather does play a factor into this one. I think we saw some missed throws from both teams, really. And Joel Klatt was talking about it on the broadcast a little bit with Gus Johnson, just about how the conditions can play a factor, but you have to rise above that. And I think for the majority of, especially in the first half, you would have, if that game progresses as we might have expected it, the University of Michigan just cruises to a win. We're not talking about the weather. We're not talking about the shortcomings that the defense showed in the fourth quarter, that special team showed, giving up that big punt return. And what you're ultimately looking for is just a more consistent level of play from all three phases of this game. The offense had opportunities to go for the kill, stay on the jugular, keep the foot on the gas, and just not give another team a reason to believe. I've talked about this at length before on other postcasts and other Michigan podcasts, but my father coached football at Northwood University for many, many years as the head coach of the Northwood Timberwolves. And we always talked about, you just can't give the opposition a reason to believe. When you take an opponent's spirit, you have done your job. And I thought Michigan in the first quarter took the life out of the Minnesota Golden Gophers. But to their credit, they were resilient enough. But there were opportunities in that game to take the spirit and take the belief away from the opposition. And Michigan just didn't do that. So hopefully they're able to improve. Alex Orji, I think, one throw I wrote down, it was after Minnesota had scored their second touchdown. Minnesota and Michigan drove down to get that last field goal to make it, 27-17. And that turned out to be a pretty big field goal. But Orji made some impressive throws on that drive. And again, that was when, Michigan drove 14 plays, 58 yards, and the running game was working. And we said this kind of the same type of narrative after the USC game, that this offense at times showed that they can be competent enough to then maybe get some first downs, keep the defense guessing, but still primarily as a team, you're leaning on the defense. But there were some plays in that 14-play drive, 58 yards, that led to the Zubac field goal, or sorry, the Zvada field goal that was good from 35 yards, that you think, all right, maybe Alex Orji can, do enough to keep at least the defense balanced. He had the 15-yard pass to Colston Loveland, who, by the way, it was great to see Colston Loveland back in the lineup. And then a couple of runs from Kalel Mullings, eventually to get Michigan into position to be able to kick that field goal to extend it from a 7-point lead to that 10-point lead, which obviously with Minnesota going back to score did a great job. So that being said, appreciate everybody tuning in. Michigan wins it tonight, or wins it this afternoon, and moves to 4-1 on the season, 2-0 in the Big Ten. It wasn't pretty. Lots to improve upon. A couple more comments that we'll get to. Aaron is up next. Aaron Shoemaker saying Orji is good, or that he can be coached up, is rationalizing it. He can hit an open man in a straight line. That is all he has ever shown. No growth. I agree with that. I appreciate that. If I'm going to sit here with the microphone in front of my face and say, oh, Orji can do this, Orji can do that, I appreciate a captive audience. I'll say, well, no, I don't think he can do that. And if you're the University of Michigan, it's more of a reflection on how you got here, as far as being the defending national champions and unable to find a way, whether it be through the transfer portal, whether it be internally, whatever it may be, to have a competent quarterback to try to defend the national title. So I appreciate that comment, and I agree with it largely. I'm not trying to, shape some narrative that Orji can be coached up and be, a competent quarterback when all he's shown us on film is athletic ability, sure, but not the ability to play quarterback and to do enough to where you feel like he's striking fear in the opposition. Now, has he done enough to, where you can't just put 9-10 guys in the box and dare somebody to throw it? I think so. I think if teams were to do that, Orji could make him pay, but at the same time, just so much improvement needed from the play of Alex Orji. And I think if there was a different direction to turn at this point in the season, you're 5 games in, you kind of have a pretty good feeling of what this team is. And if that, if there was a direction to turn, they would have made that turn already. And there just isn't, which again goes back to the notion or the idea that you just let this past offseason get away without solving the most important need of replacing JJ McCarthy. So that's my 2 cents, worth less than that. Appreciate everybody tuning in. As always, make sure you're checking out Locked On Wolverines with Isaiah Hull. What a tremendous job he does covering the Michigan Wolverines day to day. I am your post-game destination for a Locked On Wolverines postcast. Michigan will travel to Washington to look to stay undefeated in Big Ten play. That game Saturday night, and kickoff is set for 7:10, I believe. Let me double check what exactly. 6:30, I'm sorry. So that's 7:30 Eastern time. So night game will be an afternoon game for the Michigan Wolverines locally. So appreciate everybody tuning in. Michigan gets the win. We've got a Locked On Tigers postcast later today. The Tigers are going to the postseason. We've got a Locked On Lions postcast after Monday Night Football. All good things happening on Locked On Sports Detroit. That is why you subscribe. And don't forget, while you're here for your second listen, you got to check out Locked On College Football. Great stuff there on the Locked On page, and you can check it out on everything from NIL deals. We know what's going on with UNLV, conference realignment. It's all good stuff. Spencer McLaughlin's got a great thing going there, and you can find it on Locked On College Football on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. So Michigan Wolverines 4-1 on the season, beat Minnesota 27-24 despite being outscored 21-3 in that fourth quarter. Survive and advance. That's the only way we can put it. Have a wonderful rest of your Saturday. Watch some Detroit Tigers action, watch some more college football, and we will talk to you next time on the Locked On Sports Detroit page, all part of the Locked On Wolverines postcast. Have a wonderful evening.